Hi, Dr. Yass here. In this video, I want to discuss the idea of being able to strengthen without pain while still suffering pain with function. So for most of you, you've had pain, you've sought care through the medical establishment, you've probably been diagnosed with some structural variation from an MRI, a herniated disc, stenosis, arthritis, a meniscal tear, something like that. You've gotten treatment, probably some of you have gotten surgeries, you've tried therapy and chiropractic and all this stuff, and nothing's worked. And then maybe you've been on the internet or you had a friend tell you about the Yass Method, and they say, oh my God, this guy resolved my pain. How did he do it? And they say, oh, he did isolated strength training to resolve muscular deficits, which resolve the cause of my pain. And you say, oh, but I have pain bending, twisting, lifting, reaching. How am I going to be able to strengthen without pain? And you decide it's not even worth trying. Here's where your confusion lies and what you need to understand from a logical, analytical perspective. Activities are formed by groups of muscles. It takes groups of muscles to perform activities. There is a force requirement known as gravity, which is what you are pushing against to perform the activity. The muscles performing the activity have a certain force output, the ability to push up against gravity, and each one of those muscles must have an equivalent or greater force output than force requirement or of the activity, or it's going to strain and elicit pain, right? So if you have 10 muscles required to do an activity and 9 are incredibly strong, but one is not strong enough, it has a lesser force output than force requirement, other muscles are going to have to compensate to allow you to do that activity, and the attempt to try to prevent that muscle from straining. As a result of that, by definition, compensation implies muscles work in a way that they're not supposed to, and they end up straining and eliciting pain, which is why you have pain with activity. Okay? So hopefully you get the concept. Groups of muscles perform activities. There is a set force requirement for an activity, which is basically the ability to do the activity against gravity. Each of the muscles trying to perform the activity must be strong enough and have an equivalent force output, or they will lead to compensation, strain, and pain. So what's different about the Yass Method form of exercise? Well, first off, it is isolated strengthening, which is to say that each muscle will be isolated in its attempt to adapt to greater resistances, thereby making it stronger, increasing its force output to where it's greater than the force requirement of activity, preventing it from straining. The way to do this is to understand that each muscle moves one joint in one direction. So the exercises are designed that way. The entire body is stabilized except for the one joint moving in one direction, which is allowing the singular muscle to push against resistance. That sets it up so that only one muscle is working. There aren't groups of muscles, so there's no need for compensation. The resistance that the muscle will be worked against is a set resistance designed based on something called the perceived exertion scale, and that allows you to use a resistance level or force requirement that will never be greater excessively than the force output of the muscle. You will always be working with a resistance that will cause the muscle to adapt, but is never enough to cause the muscle to strain. Therefore, the force requirement of the activity is controlled. The force of the muscle pushing against the resistance is controlled. Therefore, there is no chance for that singular muscle to strain and elicit pain. Hopefully, you get the grasp of this. Other ridiculous practicing people, I don't care if it's medical or fitness people, talk about functional strengthening. It's all worthless dog shit. It doesn't mean anything. If you want to create isolated strength in the individual muscles, so all muscles have enough force output greater than the force requirement of activity so they can perform activity without straining, you need to isolate them. And to isolate them is to understand that every muscle moves one joint in one direction. Therefore, the exercise has to be performed that way with the rest of the body stabilized, which is why most of my exercises are performed in a sitting position. Then you have to apply the resistance. You have to know how much resistance to be used. Doesn't matter if you're using resistance bands, free weights, any of this stuff. It doesn't matter. It's just understanding what the right resistance is so that the muscle adapts and continues to adapt until its force output is greater than the force requirement of activity. That is why there is not a single person over 30 years that I have treated in the thousands of cases where they ended up hurting themselves performing my exercise. It's never happened. The person is fully supervised in performing the exercise, whether you're doing it in person or Zoom. Once all the exercises are performed, the person then stands up, tries to do their activity, and suddenly recognizes, oh my God, now I don't have pain doing the activity. That is because we've understood which muscles through an evaluation associated with the Yass method and determined which muscles were required to be strengthened. Then we did the appropriate strengthening. We caused the muscles to adapt to greater resistance. The muscles, the springs in the muscles then recognized these muscles had the capacity to create this greater resistance force output, and that allowed them to then integrate back into the activity and showed that on one session, the person was able to do the activity that was causing them pain without pain. So that is how you use Yass method strengthening that I can guarantee you will not cause pain in performing it and will ultimately then allow you to perform activity without pain, even though those activities require groups of muscles. Hopefully this makes sense to you. You are now more enlightened to an understanding of how the Yass method works, and clearly will recognize there's nobody on the planet even remotely discussing this concept of how to strengthen isolated and allow muscles to be strengthened without pain, thereby allowing function to be achieved without pain. So if this video is helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you like my YouTube channel, Dr. Mitchell Yass, please subscribe and click on the bell icon to get notifications when new videos are added. If you have a specific issue you want to discuss with me, you can email me at drmitch@mitchellyass.com. If this makes enough sense to you and you want to schedule a Yass Method Zoom session, you could go to my website, livewithoutpains.com. Livewithoutpains.com. You'll see a schedule now button. Click on that. You'll be given two options, either an in-person session in Jacksonville, Florida, or a Zoom session, which allows you to get the method teleconferencing wise anywhere in the United States. The great news is it's got a Calendly scheduler, so you get to pick the day and time that works best for you. So we're going to fit my time into your schedule. So if that's what you want to do and you feel this is your path, then by all means, go ahead and schedule a session. Okay, so for now, this is Dr. Mitchell Yass wishing you a pain-free, fully functional life. Bye-bye for now.